Good afternoon to you. 3:06 now. News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up, Brianna Lyman joins us from The Federalist at 4 o'clock. At 4:30 from National Review, Beckett Adams is here. And then Matthew Foldy joins us from The Washington Reporter. That's at 5:30. Lots of journalists to speak with. And we'll speak with you at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Democrats very much in disarray today, crying behind closed doors over the fate of their party in the election this year. We'll get into the details on that coming up. But first, yesterday, as we began the program, chaos in the White House press briefing room, as for the first time, Karinge Jean-Pierre, Karinge, faces hostile questioning from the press corps. Here's a little bit of what that sounded like.
You're not asking a very basic, direct question.
Wait. Hold on. Wait a second.
Eight times, or at least once, in regards to the president specifically.
Hold on a second.
That's what you should be able to answer by this point.
Wait, no. No, wait a minute. Ed, please. A little respect here.
Yeah, as Karinge just lied over and over and over yesterday about why it is that a Parkinson's specialist has been visiting the White House every month over the last 8 months. What's that all about? After the program last night, the White House released a letter from the president's physician, Kevin O'Connor, declaring that Dr. Kevin Kennard, the Parkinson's specialist, did indeed visit the White House, mostly to attend the needs of other people who work at the White House, not Biden, but he did meet with Biden on 3 occasions for each of his physicals. It's standard, you see, that the neurologists meet with the president, and the president continues to be as fit as ever, they tell us. For more on all of this, I want to bring in Dr. Andy Harris. Now he's a congressman who represents Maryland's 1st Congressional District and joins us on the phone. Congressman, good to have you with us, sir.
Good afternoon.
Does this stand up to scrutiny in your view? As they released this letter yesterday, and they said, yeah, of course, a Parkinson's specialist has been to the White House, but not really to help the president.
Yeah, look, I don't know what they're trying to cover up over there. Every American who's seen what the president is like knows that there's something wrong going on there. This is a Parkinsonian specialist, and again, Parkinsonism is not always Parkinson's disease. There are other things that need to be ruled in or ruled out. But look, the president needs to be evaluated on a regular basis by a neurology specialist, especially one who is specialized in that aspect of neurologic disease. It would make perfect sense for this. For the president to have been examined even on a monthly basis by this expert. I don't know what the White House is trying to hide, but they went from saying, "Oh no, only the White House doctor has examined the president," to now it's like, well, actually, every year, this neurologist also sees the president.
Yeah, and they kept that from us until now. What do you think the obligations should be for a president of the United States when it comes to health disclosures?
Oh, I think in this case, there's an absolute obligation. Look, I understand, the Privacy Act on health information. I get it. But this is not an average citizen. This is the president of the United States. This is the person who has a nuclear football following him, even after 8 o'clock at night. And to somehow say that the American public does not deserve to know the exact mental status of their president is just crazy. And look, that's why the polls are turning badly against the president, because the average American says this is ridiculous. What have they been hiding from us?
Yeah, seems like a big deal. Are you concerned that we haven't heard directly from Dr. Kevin O'Connor, the White House physician? The White House has not made him available at that lectern in the press briefing room or to Congress for that matter.
I'm concerned that we haven't heard from the neurologist. Again, the president's doctor is a generalist. I mean, he's not a specialist. We need to hear from the specialist. And what's of grave concern is that apparently the notation in the January physical included the notation that there is no evidence of neurologic disease in the president, and any observer could tell something is not right with the president literally for over a year now, and even going back to the last election. So the fact that they have said specifically there is nothing wrong with the president neurologically after the last physical examination in January means that somebody's hiding something, and that's wrong. That part's wrong. You can say, you can avoid the question, but if you specifically say there is nothing wrong with it, we need to hear from that neurologist why he felt there was nothing wrong with the president back in January.
There's a lot of medical conditions that are hard to observe with the eyes. So much of what happens in the body is internal, and you really need to get a close-up look at someone to assess them, take tests. But it sounds to me from you, Dr. Andy Harris, as well as so many of the other medical doctors who are speaking up about this now, who just see President Biden on television, that they can identify at least the beginnings of something very serious going wrong with the president.
That's right. And you do have to see it in person. So, for instance, some of the motion abnormalities that everybody notices in the president, how he shuffles, again, his gaze, things like that. These are things that you don't see over the telephone. You have to see in person. You have to examine the patient in person. And a lot of times doing a mental state examination is something that you have to observe the patient as you're asking the questions. You know, you have to see just how hesitant they are. A lot of times you can hear it, and that's why, again, the Department of Justice is hiding that the audio file of her investigation, because it would have revealed those kind of problems.
Congressman James Comer this past weekend indicated that he's also concerned about Dr. Kevin O'Connor's financial entanglements with the Biden family. He's been with President Biden since his time as vice president of the United States. And during his years that he was out of office, he was working very closely with James and Hunter Biden on a project involving a health company called AmeriCorps. And in other words, James Comer is suggesting very heavily that this man is deeply conflicted also financially with the Biden family. Are you concerned about that?
That's of some concern. Look, I can assume that, that I would hope that the physician could separate his financial responsibility from his professional responsibility. But the bottom line is, I don't really care what the president's generalist says about the president. I want to hear from the specialist.
Yeah.
I want to hear from the doctor who's examined him, whose specialty is this type of neurologic disease. That's what America should insist on now, not having, someone else from the White House comment. We should hear from the specialist, and we should hear exactly why he thinks differently from what every American sees.
And he's affiliated with Walter Reed Medical Center, so his involvement with the government is pretty extensive. You might imagine that Congress would have a role in getting some answers from him here, right?
Well, in general, look, and again, the problem is that there's this line about patient privacy. But I think when it's the president of the United States involved, in other words, I can't understand why the White House, if they think that this president's bill of health is totally clean, as the president has suggested, why wouldn't you have the neurologist get up and defend that position in public? And something is being hidden here, and it's hidden in plain sight. Every American, look, we saw the debate. This is not a person who can do another 4 years, and I hope maybe he can do the next 4 months, but he certainly can't do the next 4 years.
No, it certainly seems like that. All right, Dr. Andy Harris, Congressman Andy Harris, sir, thank you very much for your time today. Really appreciate you joining us.
Thank you.
That's, again, Congressman Andy Harris, who's useful both as a political commentator, given his role in Congress, and as a medical doctor, looking at what's going on here. And saying, this stinks to high heaven. And he's not the only one. There are, as I mentioned, any number of doctors who are now indicating, you saw it to the New York Times this week, that they think that that Biden's neurological problems are evident through the television screen. You can see what's happening to him. He's got all of these various symptoms, from the shuffling gait to the way his face freezes up, doesn't show emotion, to his monotone voice, to the voice going down to a very low volume, trailing off in sentences. All of these indicators of either Parkinson's or a related condition, according to these medical professionals who spoke to the New York Times. Meanwhile, over on NBC today, there's a doctor called Tom Pitts who went on NBC News, talked to Tom Llamas about Biden's situation, and he goes, look, I'm a Democrat. This is what the doctor says. I'm a Democrat, meaning I support this party. I'm all in. I'm for them. I'm voting for their guy, whoever that might be. But I have to tell you, Joe Biden, any medical student could diagnose him from afar.
You noticed anything that gives you a red flag as a doctor? Oh, yeah, I see him 20 times a day in clinic. I mean, it's ironic because he has just such classic features of neurodegeneration. I mean, word finding difficulties, and that's not, oh, I couldn't find the word. That's from degeneration of the word retrieval area.
He's also overcome stuttering, though. Could that be part of that, too?
No, this is not a palatal issue or a speech discrepancy, which is very different from a lemino dysfunction, actual word retrieval, where you pick a similar question or talk around the issue, plus the rigidity, monotone voice.
Wait, go back to that, the rigidity. What do you mean?
Rigidity, loss of arm swing, standing up lordotically. You notice when he turns, it's kind of en bloc turning. It's not a quick turn. So that's one of the hallmarks of Parkinsonism is rigidity and bradykinesia, slow movement. And he has that hallmark, especially with the low voice that said was a cold, hypophonia. A small monotone voice like this over time is a hallmark of Parkinsonism. I could have diagnosed him from across the mall.
Here are some of the symptoms from Parkinson's. We just had him up there on the screen, if we can put him back. What about the movement? Some people have pointed out the way he walks. Sometimes it's not very fast, small steps. Is that something that is common in people who are battling a disease like Parkinson's?
Yeah, it's a hallmark. Shuffling gait, we call that, so little steps. Loss of arm swing from the rigidity. When we walk, we have a nice cadence. You notice he doesn't really swing his arms. And en bloc turning, meaning he kind of pivots around his foot.
Is this not, by the way, the most honest Democrat you've heard on any of these programs? Like, he's just like, yeah, look, I'm just being honest about. That's the kind of guy you would want as your doctor.
If you said, hey, President Biden, he wouldn't go like this. So, yeah.
But I also know, and tell me if I'm wrong here, it's very hard to diagnose Parkinson's, isn't it? It's not simple. I mean, I've heard that it can be.
It's one of the easier movement disorders to diagnose, actually.
Right.
Because it's so clinic. There's very little other. And I'm a Democrat. I always say about this.
Right.
It's just like, this guy is not a hard case.
But I've had relatives who have gone through neurological issues, and I've heard that sometimes Parkinson's is not very easy to nail. You have to take a lot of tests.
It's early on. If you're just presented with like hallucinations, that could be a variety of things, or just the cognitive problems. That could be Alzheimer's versus Parkinsonism, and that becomes a little nebulous. But once you start manifesting the hallmark motor symptoms,
right?
Slow movement, rigidity, mass facies, hypophonia. I mean, if a med student did not pick Parkinson's on the test, they'd be remediated.
So let me ask you, you're a Democrat, you're a doctor. You sound like you're frustrated with what the White House is saying.
Yeah.
Why?
Well, because, I'm an American before everything. And I look at it and say, when I used to see Russia, Soviet Union, North Korea, when they just make outrageous things, like when North Korea can't keep the lights on and they say, it was some faulty power.
It's practically North Korean, he says.
I kind of hate that kind of stuff. They had 4 years, my own party had 4 years to find, this was a wreck in slow motion, and they had 4 years to find, out of 350 Americans, one person that could take the place. And here we are the day before school trying to do the homework and replace a guy who's got a neurodegenerative disease.
It's unbelievable. By the way, that clip was on NBC News was the name of the channel. We just saw this online. So when we got a hold of this, who watches the NBC News channel? Where do you even find the NBC News channel? They're hiding the good analysis on the, quote, NBC News channel. Even MSNBC is a higher profile than the so-called NBC News channel, whatever that is. But there you go. Tommy Yamas talking to a guy called Dr. Tom Pitts, Democrat, says that, the president has a neurodegenerative disorder. He goes, out of all the hundreds of millions of people in this country, how did the Democrats end up going with this guy? Well, they're corrupt. That's the answer to your question. It's a corrupt system, a deeply corrupt system, and they'd rather go with a mannequin than somebody who can think for themselves. They're easier to control, it turns out. All right. Our old friend Dr. Marty Makary was on the Fox News channel today talking about what he can see through his television screen when he looks at elderly Joe Biden.
And I think when you look at the constellation of symptoms, the slowing, the confusion, the sundowning, the very odd movements that people recognize from a loved one that may be suffering from dementia or one of the Alzheimer's related conditions, people recognize those. And what we likely are witnessing is age-related dementia, which doesn't get better. It gets worse over time.
What observations as a doctor have you made, especially of that debate performance?
Well, look, there was times of intense confusion, and it's hard to make a curbside diagnosis from a distance. But when you look at the shuffling, the slow motion movement, what we call dyskinesia, when a hand goes out very slow for a handshake, and that kind of very slow movements.
What about when he tries to sit down on a stage and there's no chair there? What is that? What about when he tries to shake hands with somebody who doesn't exist on that stage or any other stage?
Those are signs of somebody with cognitive slowing. And if I put a medical student of mine in front of the president and said, here's a standardized patient, do an assessment, if they came back and said, here, there's a normal cognition, there's no diagnosis, that patient would fail the exam. We're clearly witnessing dyskinesias and signs of age-related dementia.
So there you go. So another well-trained doctor looking at this and going, a medical student would be able to easily identify what's going on here. And if they didn't, they'd fail out of the program. It's crystal clear here. It is something. So today, what we get now is the White House trying to explain why they were lying to us yesterday about the Parkinson's expert visiting the White House over and over and over again. Well, we can't talk about that. They're just here to see the other people who are here on the White House campus. Well, it turns out, actually, no, Dr. Kevin Kennard, the Parkinson's specialist, was there to meet with Biden, but they say it was only for his physical. It was a matter of standard practice. He only met with him 3 times, and that was it. There were no other times. And the press, well, they're not quite satisfied.
And you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it didn't seem to explicitly describe the nature of Dr. Kennard's meeting with Dr. O'Connor. So can you say whether that one meeting was related to care for the president himself?
I can say that it was not.
It was not. Okay, that's great. And can I just ask why that information that was released last night just wasn't said at the briefing yesterday?
Well, no.
Yeah, why didn't you tell us this yesterday? Why did it take a letter to be released later in the evening to clean all this up?
Actually, a lot of what is in the letter was said at the briefing, to be very, very clear. I said many of the things that were laid out in the letter was actually repeated right here behind this lectern at this podium yesterday. It was what
said that.
Hold on. I said many of the things. And we got clarification, obviously, from Dr. O'Connor, but it was in line with what I said when I said.
Many of the same English words can be found if you hold up the letter against the transcript of yesterday's press briefing. I mean, obviously, no clarity whatsoever, but there were similarities. Coming up, more from that wild press briefing. Peter Doocy got a chance to go back and forth with Karinge today. I've got that for you. And your calls ahead on the Vince Coglianese Show, 888-630-9625. Good afternoon to you. It's 3:35 here at News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up, Brianna Lyman joins us from The Federalist. We'll talk about the left's attempt to meddle in our elections again this year. Beckett Adams from National Review will be with us. He's got a lot of jobs. Does he work at all these places at the same time? He really does. National Review, Washington Examiner, The Hill, and the National Journalism Center. Hey, Beckett, save some jobs for the rest of us. This is the Biden economy, you know. We'll talk about Jill, Dr. Jill, Lady McBiden. That's ahead. And then Matthew Foldy is here at 5:30. He's the editor-in-chief of the Washington Reporter. As Democrats are slap fighting amongst themselves today about whether or not Joe Biden should lead their party anymore. You can join us, 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Another White House press briefing today. More lies coming out of Karinge's mouth, as usual. And she called on Peter Doocy today. This was just a short while ago, so I've queued it up to the beginning of Peter Doocy's exchange with her, which apparently was a lot of fun. So here is, as expected. So here's Peter Doocy and Karinge.
Yes, thank you, Karinge. Does President Biden commit to serving a full second term if reelected?
Yes.
Thank you.
Nice.
We know the president says that his health is fine, but it's just his brain, and that he's sharpest before.
He was joking, by the way. I just want to make sure that that's out there. And he was making a lighthearted joke as he was speaking off. He's speaking off the cuff, and he was making a joke. You know the president; he likes to joke a lot.
He's a big
joker. He's the same guy who says, "I know I look 40." right? So he likes to make jokes. It is a joke.
Okay.
I think people laugh when he says it.
Well,
So
he also
it is a
said
joke.
They do laugh when he says it. That's true. I don't think he intended that.
Sharpest before 8 p.m. So, say that the Pentagon at some point picks up an incoming nuke. It's 11 p.m. Who do you call? The First Lady?
He has a team that lets him know of any news that is pertinent and important to the American people. He has someone, or that is decided obviously with his National Security Council, on who gets to tell him that news.
Oh, who gets to tell him? The privilege. Hey, who's the nuke message delivery guy? You know, there's somebody who works for him who gets to tell him that news. It's not me. I've been fighting for that, but they said I'm not good at delivering information.
McCarthy just said that when he was the speaker, many times when we had meetings in the Oval Office, Jill was there as well. When the First Lady's in these meetings, is she making decisions or is she just advising the president?
No, the president is the president of the United States. He makes decisions.
Okay.
So what is she
Another
doing?
family member. President Biden has told me before, he and his son don't have any business dealings together. So what is Hunter Biden doing in White House meetings?
Are you talking about the meeting where they came together from Camp David and the two of them walked to the president's meeting and he was there?
There's a report that aides were struck by his presence during their discussions.
Look, I'm certainly not going to get into private conversations that occur.
I'm not going to tell you about Hunter Biden sitting in on meetings involving the President of the United States and his official duties.
Say is, and I spoke to this before, is that when they came back from Camp David, the President spent a couple days at Camp David with his family.
For July 4th.
Close to his family, as you know.
He's very close to his family.
It was the week of 4th of July, which
not
is
his
why
granddaughter,
his
but the rest of
members
them
were here last week. They walked together, and they walked together into the meeting.
Can you say if Hunter Biden has access to classified information?
No.
Except for in the garage.
Are you guys just not, since February, testing President Biden for Parkinson's or for dementia? Because if he gets a bad result, it's all over that day.
Again, as I've said many times before, the president...
I think, just to make sure I understand the question, he's asking, are you basically not testing the guy? Because if you get a bad result, you know that's the end of his presidency. And now here is her attempt at an answer.
Has had a fulsome, comprehensive...
Fulsome.
What we shared with you was comprehensive, but he's had a full physical. We've shown the results of those physicals this past 3 years. We showed it just 4 months ago. And it is in line with what we have done, similar to President Obama, similar to George W. Bush. We are committed to continue
Notice who she didn't say.
Transparent. We are committed to continue to show the results.
She didn't say Trump.
Of those
and you know why? Because Trump's disclosures were way more transparent than anything Biden is even attempting to do here. And including Trump took a cognitive test. And then bragged about the results and was talking about all the ridiculous things he had to memorize and how he had to repeat them back. And he was really proud that he was able to do it. And he even said, I don't know, this may be exaggeration, but I seem to recall him saying that he was the best who's ever done it or some version of this. But regardless, this was the whole thing. The press was demanding a cognitive test. Trump heeded the demands and was like, sure, I'll do one, whatever. He does it. He brags about it. The press was still angry at him about it. Remember all that? And he puts Ronnie Jackson out front and center, answers questions in the White House press briefing room. They're asking, didn't Sanjay Gupta go to the White House press briefing? I'm almost positive he did. Gupta goes to the press briefing. Wait a second. You say that he's fine, but he looks fat. And he's about like, oh, he must have hypertension and on and on and on. Right? Now, Gupta, to his credit this week, he's calling for neurological exams and cognitive tests and things of Biden. But they're not putting the doctor out in front of the press. Kevin O'Connor, I barely know what his voice sounds like. I actually did search for some YouTube videos of him yesterday where he does these like random interviews. But, you know, we haven't had him out in front of the press. He hasn't talked to them at all. Nobody gets a chance to ask any questions about the state of the president's health. Not even with any restrictions. They could be like, look, there are things that are private, medical privacy or whatever. But even that, I'm at the point where I don't think Biden's entitled to any privacy whatsoever about any of this. If he's going to keep the job, he has to convince the public that he's legit. And, of course, he's not, which is why they don't put the guy in front of the press. That's why they don't put the doctor out. They're putting Biden out, by the way, on Thursday. They're doing a press briefing, a big press conference with Biden. The White House is literally calling it a big boy press conference. Yesterday, Karinge Jean-Pierre and John Kirby were calling this thing the big boy press conference. I played the audio at the end of the program yesterday, and it's like, it is the cringiest thing imaginable that these guys are calling this the big boy press conference. That's what's happening. And so get ready for that. That's going to be a lot of fun. The big boy press conference on Thursday. Anyway, here we go. Actually, here's John Kirby saying it.
After that, the president will hold a press conference. I guess a big boy press conference is what we're calling it, and take some questions from y'all.
And then Karinge.
This week, President Biden will speak to national labor leaders of AFL-CIO, host the NATO summit to show the unprecedented strength of our alliance, hold a press conference, a big boy press conference, according to Justin Sink from Bloomberg.
A big boy press conference. That'll be great. All right, let's take some phone calls here. I've got Robert calling in from Ladysmith, Virginia. Line 3. Robert, good afternoon, sir. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Hey, Vince.
Hey there. Mr. Robert, go ahead, sir.
Hey, Vince. Hey, thanks for taking my call. I kind of think that this the doctor visit 8 times is a sort of a setup, probably from Hillary and Obama. That because if they really wanted to examine Biden, they would do that in secret.
Well, who's to say?
They would sneak him in the.
Sorry, go ahead.
They would sneak him in the back door of the house in Delaware. They wouldn't bring him in the front door of the White House 8 times if they were, trying to really get an examination of him.
Well, let's stretch this out a little bit. What if he has gone to Delaware a bunch?
Well, I'm just saying that it's kind of obvious that because if the White House was doing that, if they wanted the examination,
yeah,
they would not do it. They would not do it the way they did it. So
yeah, I wouldn't. So I wouldn't give them too much credit for being super clever at covering their tracks. These people, they're pretty incompetent. I mean, we've seen that. If they were clever, we'd have a much more impressive spokeswoman than Karinge Jean-Pierre in front of us, telling us lies in a more creative way. But we don't. They're bad at this, Robert. I'll be honest with you. But I think you're right. I think you're right about Delaware. Here's the thing. I heard our colleague, friend, Dan Bongino saying this earlier, too. He said, look, think about the vacations. 40% of the time that Biden's been in office, he's been in Delaware. 40% of the time. So if the Parkinson's specialist has been visiting the White House every month over the last 8 months, how often has he visited Delaware? And guess what records we have from Delaware of visitors? Nothing. The White House does not disclose who visits with Biden in Delaware at his home. Now, you hear from Karinge routinely that, he's president no matter where he is. He's always doing the work of the presidency. The entire White House moves with him. It's totally fine. Okay, if that's the case, why aren't you reporting who's visiting with him in Delaware? And I think that is probably the place in which, if we ever got those records, Robert, the place in which some of the most meaningful scandals of the Biden presidency would expose themselves.
Yep. Good point.
I think you're onto something here, Robert. Thank you. Yeah. I don't give them too much credit for being clever. It's, sometimes when you're looking at this and you see an obvious cover up in front of you, you'd think that it would be more sophisticated than it actually is. It's not. The White House was caught flat-footed yesterday by the fact that this guy's name appeared in the White House visitor logs, Dr. Kevin Kennard. Karinge's explanation for it was like, well, this is private information. No, it's not, stupid. It's in the White House visitor logs. It's public. And it wasn't made public through a leak. The New York Times didn't get it from an anonymous source. It wasn't Fox News or the New York Post or somebody saying they heard from somebody else that this happened. It was on the visitor logs posted to your website. So now, answer the question. Oh, it's private. It's private. I'm not going to confirm or deny. What are you talking about? You already confirmed it. The White House shared this record. She lies so easily, though. Let's see. Nick is calling in from Purcellville, line 4. Nick, good afternoon, sir. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Hey, Vince. Good afternoon.
Hey there.
Vince, there's 4 questions I'd like to someone to ask KJP.
Okay.
And those would be, first off, who are the president's closest advisors? I think we have a right to know that, who's running the country.
For sure.
Okay. Who will be making the decisions regarding any official presidential acts now until January? I sure would like to know that.
Yep.
And did you consult with Dr. Fauci about whether a cold can cause loss of normal brain function, such as memory? And the last one would be, have you been thinking about your next career move?
Karinge Jean-Pierre, you mean? Has she been thinking about her career move?
Yes.
Yeah, I guess I'm curious about that too. We've paid her a lot of money. We've invested a lot in this woman. We've set her on a course, Nick. So we got to figure out what she's going to do next. I think she owes us that much.
And I have a question for you, Vince. I thought Bill Clinton was the first black president.
That's what they told us.
Didn't Joe say the other day that he was the first black woman president?
Yeah, Joe did say that. He said that in an interview that was literally set up for him to succeed. They wrote every single question for him in that interview, meaning they wrote every single answer, and he still stepped on a rake and hit himself in the face.
Yeah. And they're saying he's fit for office.
I know, and they're saying he's fit for office. Thank you, Nick. It's a great point. And you know what that interview did? It cost a black woman her job. The woman who was interviewing him lost her job. So that's another job lost due to Joe Biden in this economy. And he handled that one personally. That was unbelievable. And she went on television. She was like, yeah, the White House gave me all the answers. What do you mean? What? All the questions. The White House gave me every single one of the questions, she said. This weekend, she admitted it on CNN. She told Victor Blackwell. Listen, so here, real quick, just so people get this. This is Biden telling a Philadelphia radio station he's proud to be the first black woman to serve with a black president.
By the way, I'm proud to be, as I said, the first vice president, first black woman to serve with a black president.
I'm proud to be a black woman serving with a black president. This is the woman, Andrea Lawful Sanders, went on CNN to describe how this interview came to be.
Andrea, let me ask you here about your interviews and something. I listened to both of them, and there's something that's similar here. You each you asked 4 questions, and maybe that's what you were allowed to ask by the campaign or the White House. But they were essentially the same questions, both interviews, about accomplishments, progress in your respect.
I like how the CNN guys be like, I can totally understand this. This is probably what you were allowed to ask.
Of state, what's at stake in the election, what he has to say about his debate performance, and what he would say to voters who think their vote doesn't matter or might sit this election out. Were those questions given to you by the White House, or did you have, or the campaign, or did you have to submit questions ahead of this interview?
The questions were sent to me for approval. I approved them.
Okay, so the White House sent the questions to you ahead of the interview?
Yes.
Oh.
Yes. The White House sent me the questions. I love how the whole House of Cards is like coming down. Now, even CNN's like, I can't believe that. That's really? They sent you the My. They sent you the questions. It gives you a sense of what they're up to, trying to toss this guy out of office if CNN's reporting on it. And we went back and we pulled all the audio of this woman's questions because I don't think a lot of places have actually played the audio of her questions. Listen to the White House scripted questions she ends up asking. This is how she first of all introduces Joe.
This is Andrea Lawful Sanders. As you are now aware, I was given the unique opportunity to interview the President of the United States, Joe Biden. This interview is timely and important for several reasons. One, this is the first interview that he has done since the debate where people began questioning whether he should drop out of the race, should he remain President of the United States, and so many other things. I want you to know that he answered the questions pointedly as I asked them, and I'm asking you now to take a listen.
But he answered the questions pointedly, she said. What were those questions? I'll play this for you in just a moment. First, it's 3:51. So what did that Philadelphia radio host ask? What did the White House tell her to ask?
So I have a few questions for you. The first one is, a lot of people are talking about the debate and your performance. Is there any reason for the American people to be concerned?
No, I had a bad debate.
Yeah.
Had a bad day.
He had the answers in front of him. I don't even know why he paused. Here's the next one.
What has the Biden-Harris administration done for me as a Black person? What progress has been made here in Pennsylvania?
Wow, riveting. What an amazing question. What else?
Question number 3 for you. Every election.
It wasn't from her. It was from the White House.
And they say, this is the most important election of our lifetime. What makes this one so important, sir?
And then there was this.
My last question for you. What do you say to the people who plan on sitting this election out?
What an amazing interview. That was give that woman a big job. Maybe at ABC. She could be the next George Stephanopoulos. She's on her way. She needs a job. Joe Biden got her fired.